Lake George Battlefield Moments, a production of the Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, preserving our area's incredible history. A weekly feature on Lake George Radio, 93.5 FM, and live streaming at lakegeorgeradio.com. Here's the president of the Lake George Battlefield Alliance, John DiNuzzo.
Good morning. This is John DiNuzzo, the president of the Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, and on this program we're going to share with you information about the park, about the Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, and about the wonderful history of Lake George.
I'm Bruce Venter. I'm on the board of trustees. Some people say I'm an historian of some note. I love being on this particular alliance board because we're doing a lot of great things right now.
Talk about the Lake George Battlefield Park. It's kind of an iconic name in the area. And so much happened here. People don't realize that at Lake George in 1755, it was really the first key victory for the British in the French and Indian War. Happened right here. From there, the siege of Fort William Henry in 1757, which carried over and largely took place in the Battlefield Park property, to Abercrombie's unsuccessful flotilla of 1700 that went north from here to Ticonderoga, was beat back by the French, tracing on to the American Revolution, where we had Henry Knox and his noble artillery train staying here in late 1775, the smallpox hospital in 1776, and the key supply depot that was Fort George in 1777, and ultimately the British retaking the fort and burning it for good in 1780. What, Bruce, do you see as real highlights within the Battlefield Park?
Well, what I want to go back to is to talk about that campaign in 1755 and how important it was to the British, because the year before, George Washington had surrendered Fort Necessity, and he had actually started the French and Indian War by killing a French officer in Jumonville Glen. So the British had this idea to start 4 campaigns against the French in 1755. The Battle of Lake George was really the most successful of those 4 campaigns. So we have to look at the Battle of Lake George as really crucial. The important part, it was done with all Americans. Now, they called themselves Englishmen at the time, but they were Americans. There was only one British officer, William Johnson.
Were there many places in North America that were on an ongoing basis involved in the war of the French and Indian War and the Revolution, say from 1755 to 1780, as our site was?
I'd be hard-pressed to come up with anything. The whole French and Indian War centers around this corridor of the lakes and the waterway. And then during the Revolution, from 1775 right up to almost the end of hostilities, there is some action going on in this area.
I don't know if there's been as much a transfer of power elsewhere as there has been here. I mean, and it's been such a key place in the battlefields of certainly the northeast of what's now the U.S. It's a history that I think is unsurpassed, if not unequaled.
I agree.
Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance was founded in 2001 as the Friends Group to the park, which means we're not part of state government or state DEC, which operates the park, but we're a support group. And our mission is to preserve the history of the Battlefield Park, which is about 35 acres big, and also to promote it so that the public is aware of what's in here, and to enhance that promotion through markers, through tours, through other events that kind of give the information to the public about what's here. You know, we take that mission very seriously. Fortunately, in the last several years, we've experienced a tremendous amount of growth in membership because of the interest and because of the programs we've been running.
A lot more people know about it. It's easy to find on the web.
I'd like to say also, Bruce, in the context of the wars we've been talking about, French and Indian War and the American Revolution, what's in Lake George Battlefield Park? Of course, we have our visitor center, which is opening for the season on May the 24th, which has artifacts and mementos and other exhibits. In the park, we have a current burial site of 4 unknown soldiers killed at the Battle of Lake George in September of 1755. And ultimately, and we'll be talking more about this in future weeks, in a slightly different part of the park, with the reinterment of Continental soldiers whose remains were found in the village in 2019. So we're very excited about that. The ruins of Fort George, constructed in 1759, still exist. They're still viewable. And we have tremendous statues, which have become, over time, historic sites themselves. We encourage people certainly to become members of the Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance. It's a very nominal cost to join. You can go to our website, www.lakegeorgebattlefield.org, and see information about joining. You can read our own newsletters that are there, which bring a lot of the history of the place. As you go through those newsletters, you'll see the story of Lake George Battlefield Park that noteworthy historians such as Bruce Venter and Russ Bellico and others have shared with us. You can read about events on the website and how to join there as well. But, becoming an Alliance member, we would really advocate for, because as many people have found out, we have some member-only programs which are very special. We're going to be doing a boat tour, for example, for only members this year, which will not only take you on the beautiful lake, but also show you some of the history on the lake where it really took place. They have other programs, tours of historic sites in the region that we'll make available for members. But we always welcome the public to our programs as well. There's a lot of interesting things that happen here, and connecting the dots between that history and modern Lake George, it fascinates people.
Lake George Battlefield Moments, a production of Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, preserving our area's incredible history. A weekly feature on Lake George Radio, 93.5 FM, and live streaming at lakegeorgeradio.com. If you have any questions regarding Lake George Battlefield Moments, email info@lakegeorgebattlefield.org. And tune in every Saturday morning at 9:45 for Lake George Battlefield Moments.